This video, along with the other 6 episodes in this series, was written by What If Football. The first episode will be linked in the description, so check that out after this one. But also check out his channel, as he has got some very intriguing videos related to Manchester United that you'll definitely find interesting if you are a Manchester United fan, so I'll leave his channel linked in the description as well. Choose Call Britannia, choose Oasis or Blur, choose Optimism, or choose a film's opening monologue to rip off as your own. This was the 90s, it was Spice Girls, Chris Evans and New Labour, it was Damien Hirst, Britpop, Trainspotting, but most importantly in regards to this story, it was Manchester United. The public face of Manchester United at the time, David Beckham. 26 million viewers in Britain had seen him dismissed in the World Cup against Argentina. 3 days prior, a hero for his goal against Colombia. Now he was demonised and ostracised as the customary English scapegoat. 10 heroic lions and 1 stupid boy, screamed one headline, accompanying an effigy, and for the majority of the season, trouble at every away match. It was an unnecessary worry in pre-season, full of them. Arsenal had dominated the prior season, claiming the double that had been United's in 1996. Teddy Sheringham had failed to replace Eric Cantona, Andy Cole was still uneasy too, injuries hampered the club from Ryan Giggs' hamstring niggles to Roy Keane's 10-month layoff. To fill the hole, big money was committed, £10.6 million on Dutch defender Jaap Stam, with Jesper Blomqvist also added for £4 million as well. Still, this was nowhere near the European elite of Barcelona, Juventus and Inter Milan, or even Newcastle United for that matter. They couldn't persuade Patrick Kluivert towards the club either, and despite the reluctance of the board and assistant manager Brian Kidd, who preferred Wimbledon's John Hartson, £12.6 million as a result was pledged to sign Aston Villa's Dwight Yorke. The transfer proved the beginning of the end of a decade of a partnership between Alex Ferguson and Brian Kidd. But perhaps Kidd had already had his head swayed anyway, with rumours of Everton and Manchester City's interest to appoint him as their manager. Even Alex Ferguson caught flack from the board, ignited by the unease at forking out so much money on Dwight Yorke, as well as concern that the manager wasn't focused. Conversely, Ferguson felt criminally undervalued, as only the 4th highest paid Premier League manager despite 4 league titles in 6 seasons. United were committed to a fast start, most notably Jaap Stam, who agreed with his wife that she ought to be induced early that summer so her pregnancy wouldn't interrupt pre-season. It was a setup as traditional as the haunt they found themselves for the opener, Wembley for the Charity Shield under the shadows of the Twin Towers against Arsenal. And no, not those Twin Towers. Of the system, Gary Neville said none of us would pretend we reinvented the game or outwitted opponents tactically. Mostly it was 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, but played at an incredibly high tempo with real quality. However, it was a 4-4-2 built on partnerships, most famously the overlap of Gary Neville and David Beckham on the right, with an alternative underlapping on the left from Ryan Giggs, and 8 out of 10 Dennis, as Ferguson would nickname Dennis Irwin. Roy Keane was back in the fold, reaffirming the telepathic understanding he held with Paul Scholes. Squad rotation would become important though. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Teddy Sheringham were soon relegated to the bench, whilst Phil Neville and Jesper Blomqvist were the utility options, and Nicky Butt would also become pivotal. United failed to name an unchanged team throughout the season in the Premier League, with no player fielded for more than the 34 league fixtures. The first game of the season, however, unfortunately was a disaster, on the wrong end of a 3-0 hide-in by league and cup holders Arsenal. Roy Keane set himself about the field like a caged animal unleashed, a sign of things to come in his recovery from a ligament injury which he suffered prior to September. United had been beaten plenty of times in the Premier League era. Aston Villa and Everton held scalps over them in domestic cup finals, and Blackburn won the league most famously in 1995. However, after another 3-0 rout at Highbury in the Premier League, never before had Alex Ferguson come into opposition against such force. It didn't help that Arsene Wenger had gotten under Ferguson's skin, so much so that he privately nicknamed Wenger Old Vinegar Face, and had plenty of public barbs to throw the Frenchman's way. One example reads, "They say he's an intelligent man, speaks 5 languages. I've got a 15-year-old boy from the Ivory Coast who speaks 5 languages." It's fair to say that United started off the league season slowly. David Beckham saved a point at home to Leicester City with a last-ditch free kick, whilst they couldn't find a way through West Ham at Upton Park, thanks largely to a blatant Neil Ruddock handball that wasn't given as a penalty. Beckham had survived the vitriol of East London, a place he used to call home, and kicked on, and he would be the club's leading assist maker all season. In second place, new recruit Dwight Yorke, who had a phenomenal home debut, bagging a double in a 4-1 win over Charlton athletic. It was the first of quite a few instances of United salvaging a win from a losing position. York scored once more against Coventry City in a win at home, before finally on October 3rd at the Dell, a glorious combination was struck up. Andy Cole and Dwight Yorke had teamed up once, and it came in a stalemate at Upton Park in August. Given another run out nearly 2 months on, numbers 9 and 19 simply clicked. They netted 2 of the 3 in a simple victory on the south coast, and together grabbed 9 in the next 5 games. In that period alone, United helped themselves to 21 goals. Whilst their defence did leak at times, the front line was just getting going, and nowhere was this more pronounced than it was in the Champions League. Alex Ferguson had become obsessed with prevailing in Europe, to the point where he'd use run-of-the-mill Premier League fixtures to prepare for Champions League nights. He'd do so by placing an extra man in the midfield or defence in his mission statement to outplay European teams away from home. Teams like Juventus, Ajax and Barcelona were the yardstick, all recent European champions. Juventus in particular had become a thorn in the side of Ferguson despite a momentous 3-2 win over the Italians in the group phase the prior season, in which Ronnie Johnson started in midfield. Ferguson freely admitted that Europe had become a personal crusade. This season's particular crusade started in Poland, in Lodz to be precise, in a 2-0 aggregate win in the qualifiers. Having got his man in Dwight Yorke, Ferguson felt that he needed a platform to up his game. If there ever was a platform to challenge the former Aston Villa forward, then Group D of the 1998-99 Champions League season was it. Bayern Munich, Barcelona and Brøndby were the opponents, and only one team was guaranteed to qualify. First up at Old Trafford were Barcelona, and Dwight Yorke almost introduced himself to the Champions League in spectacular fashion with a first half overhead kick. Unfortunately, the goalkeeper was equal to it. Fortunately, Paul Scholes helped himself to United's second of the game on the rebound. Ferguson labelled it as the perfect football match, as David Beckham looked to earn all 3 points for a trademark free kick, only for Barca's 2 second-half penalties to tie the game 3-3. Then to Munich, where Bayern awaited in the Olympic Stadion. The Germans were coming off a poor 2-1 defeat to Brøndby, courtesy of 2 late goals. They went ahead through an obviously offside Giovanni Elber goal, but crumbled once again, with Dwight Yorke nodding in his first Champions League goal, and Paul Scholes tapping in a second with a hint of handball. United would be on the wrong end of a late goal, however, as Peter Schmeichel came for a long throw, and got nowhere near it, leading to Teddy Sheringham being pressured into an own goal, and United were made to do with another point. Brøndby and 11 goals in 2 games set United straight, topping the group ahead of a trip to Camp Nou. However, there appeared to be more pressing matters in the interim. A new goalkeeper would be needed for the following season after Peter Schmeichel announced the end of an 8-year career at the club that would conclude at the end of the season. Schmeichel cited a need to train and the fact that he was given scant time on holiday in between the 1998 World Cup with Denmark and his return to Manchester United for pre-season training that summer. Stunned, but it ought not to have been a surprise, following a number of uncharacteristic errors that saw the Great Dane fumble a free kick at Brøndby into his own net, and he also allowed a long-range Nicholas Alexanderson goal at Hillsborough to slip through his hands as well. The second league defeat of the season against Sheffield Wednesday, where United conceded 3, yet again came at the wrong point, with Barcelona on the horizon. Ferguson called them unrecognisable and unacceptable, openly pondering whether they were a big team anymore. However, he did note that they let themselves down really because we know that come Wednesday against Barcelona, they'll probably excel. United led the group with 8 points by 1 from Bayern and 4 ahead of Barcelona. Therefore, a win in Spain would all but see them through to the quarter-finals. In preparation, Andy Cole recalled a dressing down that he received from the manager in training on the Camp Nou pitch. He was told to focus in no uncertain terms. Spotting an advertising hoarding around the perimeter for a forward focus, a light bulb moment sprouted in Cole's mind. If he was to score, he was determined to celebrate besides the advert. But the early omens weren't great. Sonny Anderson got beyond the United defence and put the ball in the back of the net inside a minute. The visitors didn't see much action in the first half, and only had their first attempt on goal midway through the first half when Dwight Yorke's snap shot from outside of the area beat the goalkeeper, and that was how the first half would end. United only had parity thanks to Peter Schmeichel and his stupendous double save from Luis Figo, a catalogue of saves that he would make not only in this match but throughout the season that proved to be crucial. And early on in the second half, Andy Cole would have his moment of focus. By this point, everybody knew the burgeoning strike partnership, barely 2 months old. Their most cutting moment came against Brøndby at Old Trafford, a lovely dummy from Cole followed by Yorke's layoff, and an incredible dink from the former to find United's second goal of the night. This time the pass came right into York, who allowed the ball to run and received the ball again after a first time pass back into him from Cole, who would receive a similar ball back at breakneck speed. In the box, Cole took a touch with the outside of his right boot before coolly placing it into the bottom corner. The combination between Cole and York was out of this world, offered Clive Tilsley on ITV, one of the greatest sound bites of the soundtrack to United's European campaign that season. For as much as the match is lauded, however, 3 points were not gained from the trip. Rivaldo was mesmeric as ever, curling in a free kick and arrowing in an overhead kick, and he almost won the contest at the death with a long distance effort which rattled the bar. Still, it was another 3-3 against Barcelona. One match left at Old Trafford with the fate in their own hands. It didn't matter that the result wasn't more positive. The fact that United had come up against the likes of Rivaldo, Luis Figo and Luis Enrique and gone toe to toe was enough. 4 years prior they had been obliterated by the Spaniards 4-0, and United had crashed out. 5 survivors remained from that night. Like the win over Juventus a year prior, the match at the Camp Nou in November 98 was another brick in United's wall. So that is episode 2 of this series. Episode 1 will be linked in the description, and there are 4 more episodes that will be released shortly, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when those videos come out. Check out What If's Football, which will also be in the description. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, put your thoughts on Manchester United's 98-99 season, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more content as well.